Good afternoon, one and all. Hope everybody's doing well. So I just want to talk about a couple things today that I think are pretty relevant to what's going on around us. As Americans, we never asked for a virus hoax to be unleashed on us. We never asked for fake narratives on race to be unleashed on us. But unfortunately, we have had a war thrust on us, whether we like it or not. Now, I've learned that in life is 90% how you respond to it, 10% what happens to you. So, our circumstances do not make us. Our response to them is what creates us. So, one of the major points that I think would be really helpful to go over is truth. Now, in ancient Athens, we had what was known as the sophists, and the sophists are the ones who actually were responsible for putting Socrates to death. Because when he questioned them on their absurd ideas, they didn't like it. Back then they had juries that were 500 people. So they got together and they decided that, Socrates, you're guilty of, quote unquote, corrupting the youth. Corrupting the youth. Now, that was for telling the youth the truth, actually. Socrates did have a couple bad students. One of them was Alcibiades, who was a pretty corrupt guy. But overall, he pretty much stuck to the tenets of truth. And so what they did back then was they said, Socrates, we're going to give you the opportunity to choose your own punishment. So after careful thought, Socrates responded that I've decided what my punishment should be, that you can pay for room and board for me for the rest of my life, and that will be good payment for me telling you the truth all the time. Well, as you can imagine, that enraged the mob. And they ended up putting him to death for that. They asked him to drink the hemlock. His friends told him that he could escape, but he said, I'm not gonna, if this is what the people of Athens want, then this is what they're gonna get. And so we're still to this day talking about Socrates. I don't know if he was necessarily a total moral example, but as far as questioning into truth, he is a very good example, and actually the father of our modern university, which has gone completely off the tracks. So the sophists who put him to death, they believed, as one of their leaders at the time, whose name was Protagoras, said that man is the measure of all things. So if man is the measure of all things, then basically every single one of us, and there's 330 million Americans, we each have our own individual truth. And so this is why it's so hard for a lot of us conservatives to unite, even sometimes liberals, because if everyone's got their own truth, then there's always going to be arguments, there's going to be contentions, and nobody's ever going to be united around a set standard. Right now, few people believe in absolute truth and in absolute morality. Both of those causes, you'll get into an argument not on what is absolute truth and what is absolute morality, but if they even exist. Now, they clearly do exist, as all of those who have made serious inquiry into it do know. But how do we find truth? Is truth just, all of my experiences? Whatever happened to me in my life, I'm 40 years old. Is all of my experience up to age 40, is that truth? Well, that is subjective truth. That is Ryan Masano's personal truth. But you know what? Whoever's watching this, it is not your truth. It could be your truth, because our own personal subjective opinions, they can be true for everybody, but it's not definite. They just as likely may not be. Because objective truth is something that is true in all times, for all people, in all circumstances. It's an extremely important distinction to make, because practically every single person on the left, everyone who votes Democrat, they do not understand this basic distinction, that truth is not your personal life experience. And by the way, that's a logical fallacy. It's known as the appeal to antidote. Truth is not what the common person thinks. If ideas are very popular, that doesn't mean it's true. And that is known as the appeal to popular, another logical fallacy. And truth is not what some expert says. So this coronavirus, just because someone's a doctor, or Dr. Fauci, the head of the WHO, which is under the UN, started as a communist organization, he is no expert at all. So just because some expert says something, it may be true, but it's not guaranteed to be true. So, and this is where you need to consistently question and ask and ask and ask until we get to what actual truth is. Because lazy thinkers, they never find the truth because they don't do the work necessary. Solomon talked about the truth, and he said that the search for truth was like a search for silver. You go through lots of dirt, lots of work to find silver. And it's the same way with truth. If we think that the televisions we've been watching and the newspapers and our Google searches and our friends and family who have been paying attention to the same things and the schools which have been brainwashing us since kindergarten are the source of truth, we're mistaken. I mean, it may be perhaps some of the things we were taught by the schools, the media, and the tech companies, maybe some of it was true. But that is not an absolute guarantee of the truth. And until we hold these standards up for examination, we're going to continue to be misled by these nefarious snakes who control the media. And the media, they don't really want to be questioned. In their minds, they are the experts. And these bankers, they'll spend as much money as they need to. They're not spending money so that we will pay attention to their media. They're not spending money to make money in the media. They are spending money to influence our minds, and they are doing a very good job of it. Think about it. Just 4 months ago, nobody in America knew the name George Floyd. Now, you'd have to be living under a rock to not know who George Floyd is. Now, how did that happen? Well, because our media constantly sensationalizes issues like this, hiding the fact that 1,000 men a year are killed by the police, double the number of whites than blacks, and they hide the crime rates, but they sensationalize any interaction with the police that a black man has in order to whip up mass hysteria among all races against the police. And when you basically disable the public's respect for the police and law and order, you have mayhem and chaos. Now, the Rothschilds, their coat of arms, it's a Latin saying, it says, order out of chaos. They are deliberately creating this chaos because when there's all this chaos, they step in, and as our saviors, they give us order. And we'll be asking for it too. Looks like California is going to be facing its second shutdown here, very imminent. We are going to be facing a lot of hardships that many of us never dreamed we would be facing. But if we learn nothing else from this, we must absolutely learn to, as Thessalonians says, prove all things, hold fast to that which is true. Recognize that the people who appear to be the most popular, the most expert, are they telling you the truth? Because ultimately we are all going to face the consequences for following those who we believe to be true. So that needs to be said. And then also, how do we respond to Black Lives Matter? As we've said before, Black Lives Matter was founded by 3 lesbians, African-American women. Now, the cultural Marxism has 3 victim groups: African Americans who are liberal, homosexuals, and feminists. And it's no coincidence that the 3 founders of Black Lives Matter are all 3 and are trained in communism. Now, there's a lot of us who think, all this unrest, if I just sit here and do nothing, it'll just go away. It is not going away. Let me be the first to tell you, if someone has not already. We are not going back to the America before this pandemic broke out. We're not going back to that. Let me just be very clear. We are not. This is a war. It was deliberately forced upon us. This is all about control. It was designed to weaken us, to destroy us, and at the end of it, the bankers are supposed to rule the world. Their new world order will be a reality. This virus, I do think it was real, but I do think it was spread in stages. So even though, not a lot of us died right away initially, but I'll tell you, it's in stages. There's going to be a second wave, a third wave. They've got mutations of this virus. These bankers are very clever. They did a lot of planning with this. So we need to be very careful about it. While we shouldn't be swept away by hysteria, we should, trust but verify what we believe in. As far as vaccines, none of us should be taking any vaccines. As much as possible, we need to be questioning our governments that just start throwing excessive mandates on us all of a sudden. Resist. And as far as Black Lives Matter, the vast majority of the people involved in it are young people who do not research, they do not prove things, they are easy to manipulate, they are naive, they are gullible. But just because they're misguided does not mean we back down to them, right? Because one of the forms of love is correction. So to be able to get up in public, and I realize this is going to be hard, and we are going to put ourselves at risk, because you got people who are trained to hate. Doesn't matter what our race is. If you oppose their narrative, they've already started shooting people. So it's going to take courage, it's going to take bravery, but at the end of the day, we were given liberty in America by men who are willing to give up their family, their friends, their businesses, their lives for liberty. If some of us can't be bothered to get up in public and speak out for what we believe in, never mind defending what we believe in with force, perhaps we don't deserve liberty. So this is very important, but I think the more time that we devote to, if we get just like 100 people, men preferably, because I don't really think women are going to do well in this environment, but you just get 100 men to counter-protest Black Lives Matter. And, just seriously think about this. If you have not already begun openly speaking out against this communist movement, what is it going to take? If you aren't speaking out now, when nobody has been killed or injured by them in Vallejo yet, what's it going to take? When they start killing people, do you think you're going to be more courageous then? I don't think that. I think people are going to cower even more. But if we don't speak about it, everything all of us hold dear is at stake. Everything, including our own lives. So, as Patrick Henry said, give me liberty or give me death. And, as much as we've been brainwashed about the founding of our nation, we were founded upon liberty. And no, the founders weren't a bunch of Masons and all this. We've been fed about them. And this has nothing about race. This has everything to do about liberty. This is not a skin problem. It is a sin problem. And those who speak the least about sin and their own evil are those who are speaking the most about skin and racial problems of the past, which, by the way, no one who is speaking out for Black Lives Matter can intelligently discuss history, nor can they discuss morality. None of them are fit to be a critic of really anything at all. None of them even critique their own personal lives. Their own lives are full of corruption. And see, Jesus said very clearly, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." If we're not pure, first of all, we're not going to be able to see truth. And this is really a testing ground for us. When you begin to see people who just simply cannot grasp how Black Lives Matter is a communist movement, they instantaneously are telling you that, first of all, they don't know how to prove truth and they're very lazy thinkers, number one. But number two, that their personal habits are rather corrupt. Because when you are a virtuous person, real eyes realize real lies. And that's a fact. So, everyone should be thinking, how are we going to respond to this as a community? How are we going to be lovingly, kindly, firmly stand up and say, we are not going to cooperate? That no matter what Black Lives Matter says, what they're going to try to transform our community into is far worse than anything we have ever known in America. And if we don't have the courage to stand up against this, then no matter what our race is, we all are going to be enslaved even worse than we already are. We've been enslaved since 1912, since they started the income tax, where they just steal our income from us every single time we get paid. So anyways, have a great day. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, share. Take care. Bye now.